Canada's top trade negotiators are returning to Washington, D.C. for their third trip in as many weeks. Meanwhile, Canada's Atlantic provinces are meeting with leaders from northeastern United States for their annual conference. Delegates from 11 provinces and states met in Vermont yesterday. Christopher Skeete is the Minister of International Relations for Quebec. He is at these meetings and joins us now. So tell us what you're learning about at these meetings.
Well, the good news is that our partners in the Northeast Corridor are steadfast friends of Canada and Quebec. They're eager to move forward from these tariffs. And honestly, we have friends here and allies. And this is an important moment because right now Americans need to be speaking truth to power.
So when you talk about they're eager to move past this, from your conversations, is there anything that can be done at a province to state level, or what does that look like?
Well, to give you an idea of what we're already doing from the Quebec perspective is we're working at the federated state level. So that means as a province, we're speaking with different states and going to different state legislatures, and we're signing motions of friendship, alliances. We're up to 23 now of those types of discussions where actual states in Republican mostly states have signed these agreements saying that they don't agree with the tariffs, that they need Quebec as an economic partner, and that they want these tariffs to go away. So that, I think, speaks to a very big difference between what we're seeing at the federal level in the United States and at the federated state level, at the state level.
While Canadians may appreciate hearing the sentiment, is there anything that actually happens as a result of those agreements, or are they just symbolic?
Well, actually, these agreements actually lead to deeper economic integration. I'll give you an example. I sponsored a bill, rather, that created a connection between Quebec and New York State. Now, we've reduced by 45% the greenhouse emissions of New York State because we're selling them electricity. That makes the United States more dependent on Canada and Quebec, and it also helps them decarbonate. That's the kind of win-win deals that we do by having this proximity. And one of the outcomes of this discussion was to say that we need to work more on interconnection and we need to secure our respective electric grids. So yeah, there is concrete stuff that comes out of these things.
I want to talk about the current tensions in the relationship, but when you give that example about looking for different avenues that you can pursue at the province to state level, is there anything new? Are there any new agreements you can report that you can sort of give us an example of how this is going to work?
So just to give you a sense of, I know that, tensions are high and emotions are running deep and it's really tough right now. But the reality is that our border still sees the free flow of trade in the vast majority of cases. Obviously, there are sectors that are suffering. And so there's actual business going on right now. And Vermont still depends on Quebec exports to make sure that it can feed its people and to make sure that it can get the pieces that they need for their manufacturing sector and vice versa. Quebec still imports these goods. So beyond the rhetoric, we have a deeply intertwined economy together, and we need each other. And so I know that you're asking for a specific example, but the reality is it is business as usual, except for the rhetoric and certain sectors that are very hard hit. And what we're trying to do at these meetings is we're trying to remind them of the fact that we don't want to score in our own net.
Have any of the American delegations brought up to you the Canadian bans on American booze?
Actually, I was just at a press conference with Governor Scott, and one of the things that he said was he thinks that he would have been a lot worse had the tables been turned. And so I think that's how Americans feel. Our friends know that this is a reprisal act. It's something that we did following an unfair act that was done to us. And so I think they understand that we're doing what we have to do in a trade war. And let's be clear. Nobody wins in a trade war, especially not the consumer.
So no one is complaining to say, hey, you know what, Quebec, can you reconsider this booze ban? No one's saying that to you?
Well, to be clear, we've received letters from certain states that are exporters of liquor or wine. So we have received those letters, but nobody at this conference mentioned it as a problem to us. Again, it's another barrier that was added because of a trade war that in our estimation shouldn't exist. From our perspective, we can't wait for this to be resolved and to remove all the barriers.
There have been statements about Quebec's position. Some of our reporting last week into over the weekend is that Prime Minister Mark Carney, his trade team, they are considering changes, some concessions in order to get some concessions from the United States. And one of the things on the table the Canadians have suggested, according to our reporting, is that perhaps the Prime Minister may ask the provinces to get rid of the booze bans in order to lower some of the tariffs. Quebec has put out statements saying that this will be a decision for Quebec and Quebec alone. It's been a few days. I'm just wondering, is that still the sentiment right now? Has anything changed at all?
Well, I think the premise of your question speaks exactly how we feel. Prime Minister Carney will ask the provinces to review their alcohol ban. The reason why he's asking is because alcohol is a provincial jurisdiction. Quebec has been very clear. We don't want to stifle negotiations. We don't want to be in the way of a favorable outcome for Canada. In fact, we want these tariffs to go away. But we will not concede on something that is our purview if we're not adequately consulted. Our deepest goal and our most sought-after outcome would be that we would be consulted on the negotiations that are taking place, and that we would have our say in those discussions at the federal government level, so that we would make sure that I do what my job is, which is to protect the Quebec economy and the Quebec taxpayer. So one thing to remember, Quebec is not opposed to removing the alcohol ban. However, we do want to be consulted on that issue.
Have there been consultations so far throughout this negotiation process with Quebec to your satisfaction?
We have recently named an emissary, Louise Blais. She's a former UN ambassador for Canada and a former consul general of Atlanta. She is our emissary, and she sits at the table in Ottawa and has discussions with the federal government on a routine basis to discuss what our priorities are and to make sure that our concerns are heard at the federal level.
So at this point, do you have any complaints about the way that the federal government is consulting with you when it comes to these issues?
I would say complaint is a very strong word. I don't envy the federal government's position of having to consult with 10 provinces and 3 territories. Sometimes more information would be nice to have. We don't always feel that we have the most up-to-date information. But again, before any concessions are made, we would invite the federal government to just reach out to us to make sure that we are adequately consulted so that we can get on board with a solidarity position with Canada.
Okay, so that is obviously a story and an issue that we're following very closely here at Power and Politics and at CBC News. Before I let you go, after 2 days at this conference, what is your main takeaway from your meeting with these governors? Some are the delegation, some are Democrats, some are Republicans. What's your big takeaway from this meeting with your state-level counterparts?
Well, to give you an idea, Vermont is headed by a Republican governor, and the Congress is Democrat, and everybody agrees. Nobody's winning with these tariffs. My takeaway is we need each other, and this has to go because the world is getting a lot more dangerous and a lot more complex, and we're going to need to start thinking North America if we're going to secure our future.
One last thing before I let you go. Did anyone suggest anything that they might be willing to do to sort of go on a ledge for Canada to try and change the way the Trump administration is proceeding?
Yeah. I got to say, from the informal discussions that we've had, it's very risky to come out against Donald Trump. When you do so, you risk your political future. He's very aggressive on those that don't support his positions publicly. However, Governor Phil Scott wrote a letter to USTR saying that he doesn't agree with the deadline that's coming up in a couple of weeks and saying that he doesn't want these tariffs to continue. That kind of leadership is unfortunately too rare, but it takes a lot of courage for a Republican governor to do that, and we applaud him and we thank him. He's a friend of Quebec and a friend of Canada.
All right, Christopher Skeete, Minister of International Relations for Quebec, thank you for your time.
Anytime. Take care.